we will we will start with the parliamentarians now. And we are very happy and welcome you for parliamentarians, Karl-Heinz Brunner, Jasper van Dijk, Kris Verduyckt, and Kathrin Vogler, that you said, yes, we want this debate, we want this conversation with you. And we as civil society, we have made up a time frame. And we think that the 5 years, that the New START treaty is prolonged now, is extended now, that the nuclear weapon sharing countries, that they can use this 5 years to really make up a clear roadmap. And of course, we are knowing that it's very difficult and not so easy, but we think we should start now. And we want this roadmap from you. And the speakers will be that Karl-Heinz Brunner will start. And then I think that Jasper van Dijk will follow, and then Kris Verduyckt, and then Kathrin Vogler. And the questions that we all sent to you is that we want you to focus on some questions we have. How can we end nuclear sharing? What initiatives can be taken by parliamentarians or your government? And how can nuclear weapons sharing countries cooperate? We think a cooperation of this removal of nuclear arms from their territories is very necessary. And the other questions are, which steps in communication and likewise process do you think will be successful to end nuclear sharing? Which steps come at first? Ending being a host of nuclear weapons, or change or tackle the nuclear deterrence policy and NATO tragedy? And what are the difficulties in that? And then in the end, we also, if we have the time, we want to look a little bit, what do you think of the Eastern European countries, of Poland and the Baltic countries that are waiting for hosting nuclear weapons, US nuclear weapons? Wouldn't that be a violation of the NATO-Russia Founding Act? This is our question. And please, Mr. Brunner, could you start now? Is it possible for you?
I think it's possible.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. I think it's possible. Let's start with a fundamental introduction. We all, I think, share the goal of a world without nuclear weapons. The interesting question for us is how we can get there. And the situation concerning nuclear disarmament is unfortunately bad. So the first steps must be to create an environment where progress is possible again. For us, for the German Social Democrats, the NATO and its integrity are essential. We are convicted that multilateralism is the key, and Germany should be the link between different sides. Our greatest asset is being able to talk and negotiate with all others. We must keep that up, and that means we should not go too far to one side, but remain in the middle as a good moderator. Unilateral action from Germany will not help making progress, but will make disarmament more difficult. First, I would isolate us in the NATO and damage on the relationship to our closest partner. That would not make our rule as hinge for disarmament talks easier. Second, also I would weaken NATO in the eye of Russia, China, or other nuclear powers. A divided NATO cannot decide on disarmament. And third, the bombs would not be disarmed, though the world would not be safer. They might even be stationed in a country where they would be more problematic, like Poland. One of or two questions of our questions goes in this target. Disarmament is always mutual and not unilateral, and I doesn't believe that setting a good example will necessarily make other follow suit. Rather, if we want to negotiate, we need something we can offer on the other side. If we are interested that Russia disarms their sub-strategic nuclear weapons in Europe, we must give them something they want in return. German Social Democrats therefore want to have a critical and open debate in Germany, in Europe, and the entire NATO about the future of the nuclear sharing. It's in the way of the deciding of the German Bundestag since 2010, when we said we would like a world without nuclear weapons. The debate should be transparent and with the populace and the civil society. And our goal is remove these bombs from Germany and end nuclear sharing, but as part of a general disarmament strategy, which increases security for the whole of Europe and the world. We want a lobby for negotiations between the United States of America and Russia for a complete and very able disarmament of strategic weapons to reach that goal. That's why it's very good that we are here together to discuss what we can do together as European parliamentarians. We have similar doubts regarding the TPNW. I give nuclear disarmament a new dynamic, and we want to support that. However, NATO has rejected it so far. If Germany were to ratify it, we would need to end the nuclear sharing immediately with all the disadvantages I mentioned and the points of 1, 2, 3 I said. Therefore, we propose that Germany will attend the conference of the member states in January 2022 as an observer. As an observer, then we can be part of important disarmament talks without risking problems with our partners that would make disarmament more difficult. I would certainly be sensible if other NATO states would do the same. I hope it. Being an observer in this, not our goal, but our way to reach the goal for a nuclear disarmament. As a conclusion, we must actively take steps, but we must take them together with our partners, the partners in Europe, the partners in the NATO, and in a mutual agreement with Russia, our neighbor. Thank you for your attention.
Yes, thank you very much for your statement, Mr. Brunner. And I think it would be now good if Jasper van Dijk, if you could follow and make your statement. And please, for the participants, you can write questions in the chat, which you would like to be answered.
All right. Thank you very much. My name is Jasper van Dijk. I'm a member of the Socialist Party and I'm in the National Parliament of the Netherlands now for 15 years. And I agree for a great deal with Mr. Brunner. So it was a good speech. Actually, I have to tell you that my political consciousness started with nuclear weapons. I was like a boy of 10 years old. You remember, of course, 1980, 1981. We were in the middle of the Cold War. And there was this nuclear competition between Russia and the United States and the discussion of placement of nuclear weapons, of course, in Europe. So we had big demonstrations in the Netherlands, 1981 and 1983, like 500,000 people coming to the streets protesting against nuclear weapons. Actually, we never had such big numbers anymore. And of course, it's a challenge to reach that number again, but it will be hard. Let's be fair about it. On the other hand, we have some points we can work on, absolutely. To begin with, this NATO nuclear sharing concept, I think it's really outdated. And I agree with Mr. Brunner that we have to keep on putting it on the agenda all the time and stating that it is like old-fashioned that the member states like the Netherlands and Germany and Turkey and Italy have nuclear weapons that are actually owned by the United States. So we have a very good argument to say that we would want to end this reality. Now we have a very good signal, of course, and that is the treaty for the prohibition of nuclear weapons. It is accepted and adopted last year, and 50 countries have had its ratification. So of course I am trying to make the Netherlands a partner from this treaty as well. The government doesn't want it yet. But I agree totally with my German colleague, Mr. Brunner, that we have to try to make our countries observer, at least observer, next year in January, when there's this first meeting from the United Nations on this treaty. So I actually made a resolution 2 weeks ago to make the Netherlands observer in this meeting. It was rejected, unfortunately, by the majority of the national parliament. But now I can use actually this argument that Germany will be observer. Of course, it will be very important. So I can try it again. And I think we have to work on it that as many European countries as possible join this UN meeting next January. Now, this is, I think, the most important point of this meeting tonight, that we join forces. And Guido, my colleague, who will take it over in a minute, can tell you more about some proposals we have. I think it would be very good idea to cooperate as good as possible. And that means we can formulate a manifesto, for example, together. We can write an article together for European newspapers. We can make a working group together. I think this is the most important challenge now, to join forces as European countries and to make our statement together. And I really like to hear your ideas on that, because only when we join forces and when we work together, we can make our sound, our voices more clear and more louder, and to win this struggle in the end. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. van Dijk, for your statement. I just got a news from Kathrin Vogler, who wrote me an SMS that she couldn't get into our room, and I asked Sensi Hall to make a phone call to her and help her and give her support that she gets into our room. And so far as I understood, that the point that Mr. Brunner and Mr. van Dijk agreed to is that both states, the Netherlands and Germany, and also the other nuclear weapon state, they should go to the meeting of the TPNW parties in January next year and do it together. And also I heard that you want common steps, whereas Mr. Brunner put the role of the NATO very high. Mr. van Dijk did not say so exactly. But now here I have a question from Ludo De Brabander. I think, Ludo, could you ask it yourself, please, what you wrote in the chat?
Yes, thank you, Angelika. Yes, I had a question to some of the, on mutual disarmament, which has been raised by Mr. Brunner, and my question, it's threefold actually, because I think actually mutual disarmament is indeed a possible path or a way for getting into nuclear disarmament. But my first question is, what initiatives can be taken to achieve this in Europe? Are there, maybe from Germany, any ideas about that, how to instigate that? Secondly, how can this be reconciled with current policy of modernization of nuclear weapons? And according to the last ICANN report, it's especially NATO countries, the nuclear armed NATO countries, that are responsible for 2/3 of the all new investments worldwide in nuclear arsenals. So is this not contradictory? And then third, can a nuclear weapons-free Europe be a possible way? Is this something that can be put on the agenda? And this means, again, negotiations with Russia, which could include all nuclear weapons that are based in Europe. And it means that also on the Russian side, on the European Russian side, it would be nuclear freed. So yeah, these are my three questions.
Yes, please go ahead, Mr. Brunner.
Okay, I try it. At first, what can we do? What initiative is possible from Europe, is from Germany possible to start a new initiative to disarmament nuclear weapon or disarmament generally? I think it's necessary to have it always at the agenda. The German Ministry of Foreign Affairs had it in the time of the United Nations, where we was in the Security Committee, on the topic of the agenda. And I think it's necessary to be always on the agenda, speak about nuclear weapon-free Europe, because it's necessary, because in Germany, since 2010, I said in the first statement that we would like to have a nuclear-free Europe. I think personally that in this time, it's not the time to sign this international treaty, because the nuclear weapon in Germany, the nuclear weapon in the States of the of Europe are nuclear weapons of the United States of America. And the modernization of the nuclear weapon, this was the second question from you. The modernization of the nuclear weapons through the United States of America is related with Germany, with Netherlands, with Italy, or without these states, because if the modernization of the nuclear weapon is not in Germany, not in the Netherlands, not in Italy, then I think this is the modernization in Poland. And I'm the true opinion. I am the opinion that it's better than the second key for nuclear weapons are not in hand of a Polish government. I think it's better in the hand of our chancellery. And the third part, the nuclear weapon free for Europe, it's the consequence of the initiatives, multilateralism, and the consequence of the nuclear weapon modernization. I think if we in Germany have our discussion with the society, with the civil society, we can give a new spirit to have disarmament in Europe by conventional and by nuclear weapons. Really, and then let me end. My opinion is, and I have no answer there. In the population, our women's and men's in our society, they have now in this time no interest by disarmament. It's necessary to have the disarmament idea, the idea of a world without nuclear weapon, the idea of a world without weapon, the idea of a world in freedom, this idea must newborn, must new created, must new in the minds of the population. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Brunner. And could you also answer the proposal of Mr. van Dijk that he proposed to have a common, for instance, a common article in a new European newspaper for this initiative that all these 4 European nuclear sharing countries will make an initiative to end nuclear sharing, to create a roadmap to nuclear sharing. This was a concrete proposal from Mr. van Dijk, and would you advertise for that? The German parliamentarians would also go there and talk about it in the German parliament or in the Social Democrat community whatsoever, so that we need initiatives. I'm saying this from the civil society standpoint of view. We need an initiative and an answer also from the parliamentarians, because we in the civil society, we did a lot of things that people want nuclear disarmament again. Please let me remind you that in Germany, I think Fancy knows the number of the cities better than I do. I think it's 120 or 30 cities which signed the I Can Save My City appeal. This is not, this is much, this is really much. And we do a lot. We are campaigning for the TPNW. And we really would like an answer that is more than, oh, it's not the time yet. And it's fine that you all want to go to the MSP state party meeting next year in Vienna. But I think what we are asking for is more concrete steps that parliamentarians could really do and could do together, even if they might be small in the beginning. And yeah.
Yeah, it's very difficult to answer there, because I would like to answer not what I like, what I mean, give the answer in a part of the German parliament. We would like to add the German treaty with a new article to have decide against nuclear weapons in Europe. But I'm a realist. This is with our 28 members of the European Union in this time not possible. In this time it's only possible to have included with European Union and NATO a first step to a new start of disarmament. I think it's necessary a new start of disarmament. Not the problem is to implement in the treaty or implement in the international treaty. The first is in the politics to start new disarmament rules. We have had any treaties in the last time. They are all finished. All finished. Last was the Open Sky Treaty, finished. We have no verification in Europe. We must new start, and then can we go the next part to add a new article in the European Union treaties. That's my opinion.
So I understood this right, that you mean if new disarmament steps now come from the conversations between Russia and the United States was really some new steps, then this was open the space also for initiatives in Europe. Did I understand that right?
Yes, you understand it right. Because we in Germany are the opinion the Russian Federation is as our neighbor. We would like to have a good neighborship. neighborhood. And in this good neighborhood with the Russian Federation, we must know that the Russian Federation are disarmed only in a balance with the NATO in Europe. If we at first said, okay, we disarmed all, in the opinion, the Russian Federation not disarmed. And our European partners, like Poland, like the Baltic states, like the Czech Republic or Slovakia, don't understand this one because they have had very, very deep grip about the Russian Federation.
Thank you very much. I now see that Kris Verduyckt from Belgium came to join us. Very welcome, Kris Verduyckt. And I would also like to ask you for a beginning statement, and then we go to the next important question from our audience, from Jean-Marie Colline, about the strategic autonomy proposed by France. But at first, please, your statement, Mr. Verduyckt.
Thank you very much for having me, for inviting me. It's like you said, I'm Kris Verduyckt from the Flemish party Vooruit, which means forward in English, but we are the Flemish Socialist Party. I'm member of Federal Parliament, Belgian Federal Parliament, and together with my colleague Vicky Reinhardt, we are working on this topic about the nuclear weapons, the disarmament of them. I am also working about kill robots. I know it's a different theme, but it's something I think when we see the situation in the world, which is not getting better for nuclear weapons, also the topic of the kill is worrying us. Maybe tell you a little bit about the situation in our country and where we are standing today, if that's okay. For my party, for us, it's obvious, and we don't believe in nuclear weapons at all. We think they did not prevent wars in the past, and we think we don't need them. For us, it's very logical not to have them. And today we are again a member of the federal government in Belgium. So that's interesting for us to get progress in this situation. Of course, officially there are no nuclear weapons in Belgium. That's the main statement from every government in the past. But we know that on a military basis in Kleine-Brol in Limburg, it's I think 10 kilometers from my house here, there are between 10 and 20 nuclear P-61 bombs. We had some political discussions in Belgium focused on the nuclear capacity of the new F-35 fighter. And I must say, when you see this discussion, it's a bit a ghost discussion. This government, this minister says, I didn't decide it, and the government before also didn't decide anything, but still the jets will have nuclear capacity. So you see how difficult this theme is. But, and that's very important, I think, in the governmental agreement in Belgium, which is now a 7-party coalition between liberal parties, green parties, socialist parties, and a Flemish Christian Democratic Party. There is in the coalition agreement, there is a paragraph about nuclear weapons that's stating the following. For Belgium, the non-proliferation treaty is the cornerstone of the global nuclear non-proliferation regime. Without prejudice to our engagements and obligations within NATO, Belgium will continue to play a role in nuclear disarmament and non-proliferation on a global level. Belgium therefore will play a proactive role in the 2021 NPT review conference and will, together with our European NATO allies, investigate how to strengthen the multilateral non-proliferation framework and how the UN Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons can give a new impetus to multilateral nuclear disarmament. This is an interesting paragraph on which we work every day in Parliament, and especially my colleague Vicky every day before and especially behind the scenes. And to conclude, I will say what we are currently working on this issue in the government. there's three things. The first point is there's an agreement that Belgium can play a proactive role in nuclear disarmament. In the government, together with the Green Party, we have asked to order a study on how this role could be played. We would like that this study will be conducted by the Egmont Institute together with the Dutch Institute Klingendahl. That's one condition, important condition for us. The second one, there's also an agreement that Belgium can be a partner in the Stockholm Initiative. We already signed the Declaration of Berlin. And the third one is the most important one, I think, that we are making a pledge to have an observer status in the UN Treaty. That's something we really would like to become in this government, and we are discussing this behind the scenes because we think there has to be a new discussion within NATO, and that's a role Belgium can play, and especially when we get that observer status. So maybe to conclude my intervention, so this is where we are standing today in Belgium, and we are really in need of other countries that are thinking in the same way, so that we can have a stronger working together on this. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Verduyckt. Before Kris, from Mr. van Dijk and Mr. Brunner, especially, but this proposal came from Mr. van Dijk, that European parliamentarians, especially now here from the nuclear sharing countries, the parliamentarians could write a common article together in a European newspaper or make an initiative in the European Parliament and really put there a common initiative to develop a roadmap of ending the nuclear sharing policy. And would you, for instance, together with Mr. Brunner and with Mr. van Dijk and also with an Italian parliamentarian, we could not reach one, and we tried very much to have a Italian parliamentarian also with us, but it was possible yet. So would you also agree that this could be a step to really show a common interest in these 4 NATO countries, because not all NATO countries host nuclear weapons. You wouldn't be, these 4 countries, if they put the nuclear arms back to the United States, wouldn't be the only ones in Europe. We have 5 countries in Europe that do not host nuclear weapons, and they are NATO members. So this is nothing very special. We really could make a step forward. And would you like to also take the initiative, for instance?
It's like I said, I think every step we can set by working together is for us it's a good initiative. Everybody in Belgium know what our role is. We as our party is very much in favor of getting rid of those nuclear weapons. So I think for me it's no problem to say that we are welcoming every initiative that can help us in this way, because as we feel also in government, I think this is a topic where every country is looking at every country. I feel that very much, and when we have the discussions in government, it's always an issue. What are other countries doing? So for us, it's no problem to be part of an initiative like that.
Yeah, thank you very much. And then we have the question from Mr. Colleen. What do you think about the strategic culture and strategic autonomy proposed by France, as it's a clear plan to develop European nuclear deterrence? This leads us into the question of the nuclear deterrence. Is nuclear deterrence something one should go for, or do you say in the opposite, no, nuclear deterrence is obsolete now, that might have worked before, but it's not up to date? Who would like to answer this question? Who would start? please go forward.
I try to start. I think it's very difficult for a German and Belgian or Netherlands parliamentarian to speak about the French nuclear strategy. I think we must go at the bottom. What is the military value of bombs? Bombs stationed in Europe have a little military value. I think a very little, but concern alliance policy. It's a sharing of burdens, a public commitment to the sharing of burden, and it's an anchor to link the United States of America with the European security. And this part, the French Republic has its own position, this position of independence, the position of the Grand France République. And we have in Germany a special situation here. A special situation in Germany, and the discussion in Germany is because we have the certain situation that our delivery system, the fighter jet Tornado, is reaching the end of lifespan. Thus, we need an open and critical debate, neither just giving up nuclear sharing because we don't have plans anymore, no simply buying a new one without thinking about nuclear sharing to justice to the difficult issues. And our French friend said, oh, can our under umbrella, or not the umbrella of the United States of America. It's charming, it's very charming from the French Republic, but it's not the right way for a non-nuclear world. Even if Germany gives up the technical nuclear sharing, like in this position now, we must continue political nuclear sharing and remain part of NATO's nuclear planning group, because then we can discuss nuclear strategies like a possible no first use policy and disarmament steps with our partners. It's, I think, better to be inside than outside, and it's better in the NATO than only with our French friends.
Thank you very much. I read a little bit in the chat from Guido, who is the assistant with Mr. van Dijk, I think. And you are proposing, similar to what Karl-Heinz Brunner said, a tit for tat strategy, and think about what one could could offer to Russia. And then Sensi Hall writes that Russia doesn't want NATO to attend the TPNW meeting. And then you said that Poland, if deploying nuclear arms in Poland would be perceived as a non-cooperative action, if not threatening Russia. And it's also what I mentioned before in the beginning of our conference, it's against the NATO-Russia Founding Act. This could also be something that could be declared by parliamentarians, European parliamentarians together, and makes this broaden the discussion and deepen it also at the same time. Now we have a question from Ruth Rode. She's asked to everybody, all the three ones, what would take it to build a pro-disarmament initiative within NATO and stop pointing fingers that other countries would not want it and it would threaten multilateralism? Karl-Heinz Brunner has pointed toward the nuclear weapons being stationed in Warsaw. What do you say to the argument that it would be illegal under the NATO-Russia Accord? And then we have the Macron speech, but this is too much, I think.
Let me please answer to the legal of the stationation against the NATO Russia Founding Act. The NATO Russia Founding Act is clearly only for stationing in outside of NATO states, and it's for the area of Belarus. It's decided for Ukraine and other states, but Poland is as a sovereign state, member of the NATO, and into the NATO states is all possible, was it necessary for the security of the NATO and the NATO states. And the NATO Russia Founding Act is not, stays not against these ideas to stationate the nuclear weapons in the Polish Republic. It's not good to to bring it to Poland because it's nearer to the Russian Federation, but it's possible and it's not illegal.
Thank you. And do the others agree on this idea or not? It's not an idea, it's a perspective.
Well, I want to make a short remark because I have to leave the meeting. I think it would be a very bad idea, of course, to place nuclear weapons in Warsaw. It would be a very aggressive statement towards Russia. And we should, of course, work the other way around. We should abolish nuclear weapons to begin with in Europe and not place new weapons in Eastern Europe. I think it would be a very dangerous idea. So I really want to state again that I think if we want to enforce our power, that we have to work together, that we join forces, that we make a statement that we want to abolish nuclear weapons in Europe. And it would be a very strong statement if we write it down in an article, especially when it would be done by NATO member states like the Netherlands, like Germany, like Belgium, like Italy, like Turkey, in countries in which there are nuclear weapons right now owned by the United States, and we should really get rid of them as soon as possible. That would be my last remark, but Guido van Leemput, my assistant, indeed can make a follow-up, and he will stay in this conversation. And I wish you all the best. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. van Dijk. And I want to mention at this point that we as an alliance, we want to make a webinar or an online event also together with Eastern European parliamentarians, because we think that this problem is really a great problem, and we need to make a change on that. And maybe you have a good context to some Polish or Czech or Baltic parliamentarians and could support us to organize and set up such an online event. Yes, and maybe now Kris Verduyckt would also want to say something about this question with Poland and NATO Russia Founding Act.
I cannot agree more with my colleague Jasper van Dijk that it will be a very bad idea to do so. Maybe to say something more about a resolution that will be voted in plenary session. It's already voted in the Commission of Foreign Affairs, where we ask federal government to start again conversations. It's a resolution about transatlantic relations. So we ask to start Belgian government again conversations with as United States as Russia to see how this UN treaty can have a new impulse on this multilateral nuclear disarmament. I can imagine that in this conversations also will be talked about this topic, but I'm totally agree with Jasper van Dijk that this will be a very, very bad idea and it's not the way to go. But I must say that we had in Commission Defense last week, we had an update of the safety situation in the world, and it was a really pessimistic note. And I must say that a lot of people that are in favor of this nuclear weapons will use it also in Belgium to say that it still has been needed because of this deteriorating international safety situation, which was made by 10 Belgian experts, and which was not a good thing.
Yes, thank you very much. And Ludo De Brabander also said, wrote something in the chat about NATO-Russia founding. And Ludo, would you like to say it yourself? And I don't have to read it.
You know, it's just according to what Mr. Brunner says, because the Russian founding, NATO Founding Act from 1997 do actually, it's not a clear interdiction, but it's a clear statement of not deploying any nuclear arms in the new states like Poland, because this was, the act is from 97, so it was about the NATO expansion at the time, and it was at the time that clearly Poland, Hungary, and Czechia would become NATO members. So, and there was a clear engagement by NATO in this act not to deploy any nuclear arms in the new state. So it would be contradictory to the NATO-Russia Founding Act. Anyhow, well, that's only my remark, because I think it's not an interdiction, but it's a clear engagement.
Yeah, thank you very much. And I would like to make a remark myself. We are living in a world where cooperation among states and among civil society is more needed than ever. We have the climate crisis, and to solve this climate crisis, we need peace and we need security. And being the European president of the IPPNW, we clearly say that that climate change and to tackle all these problems cannot be done when we have nuclear weapons, and when we we have more armament in nuclear weapons and also in conventional weapons. So clearly, very concrete steps to do disarmament are needed very much. And Mr. Brunner said before that Russia and the United States should go on with their talks, and there might be an open window where Europe could do more. But I think Europe could also do something on cooperation and disarmament, and putting this into a frame, a security frame, which is needed in solving the climate catastrophe. And how I want to ask the three of you, how do you think about this frame, the reframing the nuclear disarmament within solving the climate problems and catastrophe? And I think in the climate, solving the climate catastrophe, we need so much cooperation, and we have so much to give from one state to another state and support each other, that it should be possible to find new solving pathways for ending nuclear sharing. So please, I would like to get an answer for this idea. Would you like to start, Mr. Brunner?
I think it's a good idea. I have similar ideas, but this idea needs a long time to be realized, because it's necessary to speak with all states. The nuclear weapon disarmament is same problem like the catastrophe with the climate change. But it's necessary that at first we find a regime to speak with between the states, because in the United Nations there is no speaking there. And we must, from Europe, to build new bridges to the Russian Federation a bridge between the United States, the Russian Federation, and bridges between the European Union and the Russian Federation. Because in this neighborhood, it's necessary to speak with us. And your idea, it's good, but I don't know how and where we can buy these bridges. On this time, because I must go outside of the meeting, I say very, very thank you for the discussion. Thank you for the invitation. And I would like to come again in the next time if you have a webinar 3 or a webinar 4, and if you like German parliamentarian insight. Thank you for the invitation. And I find I've had an opinion it's a very good idea in the next webinar to invite parliamentarians from Poland, the Czech Republic, from the eastern part, the eastern NATO part, and the Eastern European membership. Thank you very much, and a nice evening, a good summer, and a good evening, good day. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, and thank you very much, Mr. Brunner, that you have shared your time with us. Thank you. And now maybe we go to Guido van Leemput to answer the question.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Well, I'm Guido van Leemput. I'm the Dutch Guido in this community tonight. And I'm speaking more or less on behalf of Jasper van Dijk, who just left. We prepared this meeting, and I want to say some things at once. So regarding the connection with climate destruction, actually, it's obvious that we should try to bring it on one denominator, although there are some difficulties, I think. So we have to try it. But regarding the plan we proposed, and I think Mr. Verduyckt was joining it. I'm not sure, but I thought he said something. We try to we like to propose an article from European parliamentarians, in the first place from countries that have nuclear sharing with the American nukes. And of course, we like to expand it to France and Britain. But I do actually agree with Mr. Brunner that it's not our first obligation to interfere over there. It's up to the French and the British. And there are French and British colleagues who are willing to do so. And obviously, or perhaps not obviously, but hopefully there will be colleagues in mid-European countries who like to do the same. What Mr. Brunner said about Poland, which kind of fear, which is perhaps relevant, but I do agree with the comments in the chat that it's not up to us. We have to put pressure on our countries, especially together, to bring a process of denuclearization or disarmament in Europe. And I think it was you, Angelika, who spoke about roadmap. So if we can start in the nuclear sharing countries, and we can expand to the French and the British, and perhaps to the Russian, I don't know. It will take some time, I fear. That would be progress. So actually, I want to start there and not pointing the risks, what the results of our pressure could mean. For instance, bringing the nukes to Poland or Slovakia. Well, perhaps it's even planned for wartime situation. It's not impossible. So, but it's not a reason for us to stop here. That's what I want to say.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Mr. van Leemput, and please, Mr. Verduyckt, would you also make a comment on that question, climate and nuclear weapons disarmament?
Yeah, if there's one thing to say about climate, the climate problem, it's a global problem. We will have normally in November our COP26 in Glasgow, which was postponed last year because of the COVID crisis. I'm sincerely hoping that the COP this year can be organized can be organized not virtually, but with all member states and all delegations over there. I think to have a successful COP, 6 years after Paris, it's very important that everybody is there. And we all know that the vaccination in Western world is going quite good, but there's a lot of countries in the world where there's a big problem with vaccination. And so I have a bit of fear that especially the vulnerable countries, the countries that will be the first victims of climate crisis, that it will be difficult for them to be there with a good delegation of people on that COP. That's a fear I have. What we see about climate is that we had the G7. I don't know if it's the right word in English. The G7, the seven richest country of the world. We had NATO, and on all those international tops, climate was on the agenda. So I think everybody knows today climate is a very big problem. Also, countries like China and Russia, they know that. Still, people think that when China makes statements about climate, that's also a part of strategy. And I think it's like that. When Russia is talking about climate, there's always a part of strategic in it. Russia has a very big reserve of gas, and they know that the gas will be needed to go from coals to green energy. So there will be strategy in their decision, but we do not have to forget that they also know that there is a big problem. In China, they have a lot of problems with their agriculture right now because of the problems they have with rivers. A big city like Shanghai is really in trouble. They are now already under the sea level. So they know in future they have a big problem for that city. They see the glaciers melting in Himalaya. So China knows there's a big problem. So that's the only good thing about climate.
Mr. Verduyckt, we cannot hear you really.
Well, it's a global problem, but about this situation, we are now talking about carbon adjustment tax. Yes, it's better now.
Yeah.
Okay, I will add my interruption. We are now talking about carbon adjustment tax. We are talking about the Treaty of Chicago when it goes about taxes on kerosene and things like that. All those discussions and all those decisions we have to make have also an impact internationally. When we protect our own market and say, okay, we no longer import products from countries that are not very dealing good with climate, this has an impact internationally. And the fear is that maybe this kind of decisions also will make how do you say the atmosphere between countries not easier. So it's a sword with two sides. I think we all in the same problems, but the way we will deal with climate crisis will maybe have some negative impact also about relations internationally. So I think it's good that we talk about the nuclear disarmament also on topics which deal with climate, but yeah, it can go two ways.
Yeah, thank you very much. Now here there are three more questions. One is a proposal that these different problems, maybe the proposal by Mr. Case, that these different problems could be put together if we make a revival of our organization, OSZE, the Organization for Security and Disarmament and Cooperation, again, because this is a very wide and overbroading organization, and we could give this organization, the OSZE or CSZE, more competence, more money, more strength. If the countries that are members to this organization wanted, and in this organization we have a cooperation between Russia and European countries and also the United States. So this might be maybe a good idea. And then is from Mr. Johnson, Chuck Johnson, that the discussion of the anti-ballistic missile systems in NATO countries, which would be interesting. Do you want to ask this question yourself, Chuck?
I think probably not on this call, but I just wanted to raise this as if we're going to have dialogue with Russia. Obviously, one of the major stumbling blocks has been the George W. Bush pulling out of the ABM treaty and the emplacement of anti-ballistic missile systems in Eastern Europe is a major issue for Russia, not one that's talked about as much now as it was when it happened, but if we're going to have reductions between the United States and Russia, that issue is going to have to be on the table between those two countries, and having opinions from Europe on that issue will be useful. I don't want to detract from the discussion today that's focusing on the nuclear sharing, but I just wanted to raise that as an issue that is beginning to be discussed by the arms control community, the NGOs in the United States that are trying to influence the government there, because they recognize that if there's going to be further reductions with Russia, there's going to need to be some limitations on the anti-missile systems. So I just wanted to raise that. That's all.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And then Ludo De Brabander asked the questions, as I understood it here, that we also could aim for the goal of a non-nuclear NATO. NATO must not be a nuclear alliance. It could change. And to change it in a non-nuclear NATO, and we could propagate that. Did I understand you right, Ludo?
Well, it's just also the fact that NATO defines itself only a nuclear alliance since 2010. Before it wasn't a nuclear alliance, not in the sense that it was like the NATO was a nuclear alliance. Of course, the nuclear weapons always played a role, but it's at the Lisbon summit in 2010 that for the first time it was NATO defines itself as a nuclear alliance. And I think the reason for that was exactly to legitimate the possession of nuclear arms by the nuclear weapon states of NATO, and to collectivize it, to make a collectivization, and to make it a responsibility of the whole of NATO, and make it, and to legitimate also investments in nuclear arms. So why not try to stop this definition of NATO as a nuclear alliance? So, and this makes it maybe also easier, because I read the question of Ruth Rode. What is the main political challenge to the 5 nuclear sharing states getting together and multilaterally deciding to end nuclear sharing? I think this can cooperate. This is something that is connected to each other.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Verduyckt and Mr. Leemput. Would you answer to this question from Frau Rode?
I'm not sure which question I have to answer, but I want to.
What is the main political challenge to the 5 nuclear sharing states getting together and multilaterally deciding? What I understand it in a way that what hinders, what's the barrier that they really get together? Why is it so hard that they get together? She is talking about 5 nuclear sharing states, which means Turkey included. I would not like to include Turkey here because it's really too complicated. Let's start with 4 nuclear sharing states which are talking together, the governments. It's at this time it's a little bit difficult to talk to Mr. Erdogan.
If I see discussions already in Belgium politics and how difficult it is to get everyone on the same line, I can imagine how difficult it is about this 5 nuclear sharing states. what I see is there's not a lot of trust, and we see today that there's a lot of things happening also online. There's a lot of like we say some cyber attacks and things like that, which makes that, in my opinion, trust is not getting better. The trust is getting, there's not much trust today. I think that's one of the main problems today. I don't know, but I'm of course, it's what Rora says. Yes, she's right. It would be very good to bring them together, but I think that's one of the main reasons that it does not work today.
Okay, and Mr. Leemput, what do you say?
Thank you. Yes, the main political challenge, I suppose it is building up pressure from the bottom of society, from us. I suppose all of these countries, at least Belgium, Netherlands, and Germany, have to replace their B6111 next year or the next coming years. So it's an opportunity to say, please get rid of this together. So I think we have to start together from below. The second thing is that I can published a report in which it bluntly said NATO can survive without nuclear weapons. So actually, I can say we are not anti-NATO, we are anti-nuclear weapons. And believe us, you can survive without nuclear weapons. I'm not sure, but that's what they said. And it's important, especially what Ludo just said about the decision of 11 years ago in Lisbon. Then there is what Mr. Verduyckt said about losing trust is definitely true. And we are in a kind of, I don't know, info warfare regarding cyber attacks. But if there's one reason to get rid of nuclear weapons, it's the risk that those systems, that infrastructure is hacked by an enemy, whatever he or she is. So actually that's an extra argument to say, let's get rid of those nuclear weapons. But okay, you have to reason against the odds of the common sense at the moment, which is framed, I think. And there is something else. There was a plea for reviving the OVSE, as we call it in Dutch. OVSC, Belgium. OSCE is it in English, I think. Actually, what I want to, it's perhaps a silly proposal, but we need an extra Helsinki Agreement of 1975. We need a new set of instructions regarding cooperation in Europe and perhaps broader, but okay, perhaps we can start here. And as we are together here, we can bring up the first initiatives. So I think these are all political challenges, and it's regarding building up pressure from below. That's the method, I think. And there are all kinds of things which are important, as climate change, as anti-ballistic missile systems of the Americans were, if I may respond to Mr. Johnson, I think the Americans were planning AEGIS systems in Poland next year. And Russia, regarding this Black Sea incident, was complaining about this again. So everything is intermixed and intermingled. And actually, we should work out a common strategy from Western European citizens.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Leemput. This was a good statement at the end, and especially when you came again to the proposal of OSZE, reviving it. I can tell good news. There was an initiative from a Finnish peace organization to make a pledge to revive the OSZE, and this pledge was given to all the countries and the NGOs in the states that are around the Baltic Sea. And for instance, IPPNW signed it too, and I think 50 or more organizations and some president of Finland is on top of it and wants to make follow up. So let us just, I would like to end our on our online event now and thank everybody for the participation and for your good ideas, and we will keep you up, and we will keep also up with other online events, I think after the German elections, after September or October, and we'll go on because we think we need this discussion between the countries. And I hope very much that Mr. van Leemput, that you and Mr. Verduyckt, you ask Karl-Heinz Brunner and also other parliamentarians to follow up this idea. This is wonderful to make a common statement and put it in a good European newspaper and also advertise it in the European Parliament. Thank you very much to each of you, for everybody. Thank you, and have a good evening and a good summer, and stay healthy. And I hope to meet with you again on such an online event, and maybe also in person sometimes. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.